Right now we're standing on a corner at an electrical wholesale store, but it is a corner that was the wholesale of my life, I guess, is a fair thing to say. My family came to New London when I was 3, and if we look over this way, we'll see the corner of what used to be Main Street. We lived at the corner of Main Street when we were children, and we moved 2 or 3 years later to a house that was about 300 yards from where we stand. You can see the bridge going over. Our house was down the street, and eventually, well, let me tell you about the house. It was I think called a Spanish hacienda. It had a beautiful back porch. It was a white house. It was a large yard. We had a 2-car garage. We had a shed. We had a cornfield. Roses were growing down the side of the house from the front yard to the back. On the opposite side of the house, grapes grew down the side of the house. It was really fun. It was loving. There were pussy willow bushes. We had a peach tree, an apple tree, a crab apple tree, and at the end of the yard was Winthrop Cove, where a few people had rowboats. I don't think we had one, but a few people had rowboats, and they would fish out in the cove, and they could actually cruise out into the Thames River just under the train tracks. So it was just a really, really great place to grow up. We played under the bridge. We played 1, 2, 3 red light and giant step under the bridge. Winthrop Elementary School was close enough that we could hear the bell in the morning and know we had to run to school. And we played on the playground there, of course. It was just a wonderful, wonderful place to grow up. The street was filled with children and adults, of course. I don't know that we can see from here, but there's a hill that comes down from Crystal Avenue to what was Winthrop Street. And at that hill, we would sled ride into my backyard. And everybody did it. It was just such a good time. On that hill was a place called York's Bakery, where Mrs. York had baked goods. Even just across the street, where behind the school bus was Aubrey's, a little store, a corner store, kind of like today's convenience stores, except it had penny candy, which was excellent, and we all went there. Not before school, though. Okay, before school. It was just a wonderful, wonderful place to grow up, and I recall that, I remember my dad talking about we have to move. I didn't know much about it. I didn't understand a lot. But I remember that Mr. Edwards, who lived across the street, refused. And he was the last house to be torn down. And they tore it down the same day that he moved. And to me, I can remember an emotion from that. Tearing down a man's house. I felt like he was going to sit on his front porch until they carried him away, and with the wrecking ball coming in the back door as they carried him off the front. Now, that's not literal, that's just a child's childhood fantastical memory. But it speaks volumes to what happened. And then they created the high-rise.
I lived in the high-rises at the beginning. We were the 3rd family to move into C40 Crystal Ave apartment C22. We were excited, as you know, because we had moved already, so many times, and each place was, was different. But when I saw my room at Crystal Avenue, I was not impressed, because we came from houses. We lived in houses that had character. We lived in houses that had that beautiful molding and everything. And then when I went in Crystal Ave and I looked at my room, only the bed had arrived by then. And it's all cinder block, and it looked like a cell. It looked like a prison cell to me. I remember that. people did take care of the property. They did take care of the property back then because we had the two Gomez brothers, Larry Gomez and Joseph Gomez, the Gomez brothers, and they were prize fighters. They were former prize fighters, and they took care of that property. They kept that property immaculate, and people didn't throw paper on the ground. There was not urine in the hallways. Nobody wanted to have to answer to the Gomez brothers because they didn't take no stuff. And you're not gonna make work for them.
I lived in the 8th floor, and on hindsight, when I look at it now, I thought it was very small, very isolated. I could say now. I was a kid. I was there probably since the age of 6, and I think as the years, like I said, I lived there 19 years. I think my mom kept our apartment was spotless. Puerto Rican, you don't play. Spotless. The kitchen, the stove, the oven, and we all took part of it, I remember my mom always, cleaning the house, sweeping, us cleaning the room, whatever, the bathtub, everything, everything, But when things got broken sometimes, which happens, in any apartment, sometimes it took longer for people to come up and fix it, So sometimes, there was like urine in the elevator. People urinated down the stairs, It was a little crazy in that sense, But for me, it was just, hey, it was not I don't want to say the norm, but you got accustomed to it. Back, one of the things with maintenance was something that I didn't understand is that when the elevator broke, it was malfunction. It took days to fix it. So think about families that live, like my family, we live in the 8th floor. So if my mom had to do some grocery shopping, we had to carry those bags. Okay, 8 flights of stairs, 8 times 12 steps, that's 96 steps, close to 100 walking. And mind you, I'm thinking I was a small kid. As I grew older, of course, it became easier. I could help my mother, but I think about what she had to do. So those are the things that I don't understand. Like, why would an elevator be broken for so long? Why? Why can't they fix it? There was a place called the CRC, Community Resource Center. It was in the A building. We either were there or we went behind. There were some basketball courts, or we went into the field where we had there was a merry-go-round, there were some monkey bars, and there was a baseball field, which we usually use either for baseball, for football, and there was matter of fact, there were some trees lined up on the parking lot side, and some of us, we climbed trees, so it was kind of a fun atmosphere. So there were great things that happened there. I remember, listen, annually Connecticut college students will come and the Coast Guard and help us do a cleanup of the whole area. Will come and do cookouts with us, that there was a cookout. So that was a memorable day too for me. In the summer, before they left, because I know colleges end around May, so I think they were there by April or something. So it was fun having them come. Every year they will come and do that. We'll end up with a cookout. So it was great. It was great, and clean up the area with us and help us. Because I'll tell you this, when I became a city councilor, and I will always go in there, either canvassing, either talking to the people. And when I went there, after many years of not being there, I just, I walked those halls, I said, oh my God, this is where I lived. And I knew of the things that when I lived there, the things that people dealt with, it got worse. So I said, I just knew that, we had to do something. There had to be something done for the families there, because again, there are great families there, and we had to do them a good service, and get them out of there and get them somewhere else that was nicer.
Crystal in the 80s was the place to be anyway. Like, State Pier wasn't that popular, Federal wasn't that popular to hang out, everybody always wanted to come to Crystal Avenue. So, we were like the mecca of the town at the time. The most thing I remember the most is that our community in the projects was closely knit. Parents watched out for other parents' children. You can never go hungry. If your mother wasn't home, you can go to your next door neighbors. They would definitely feed you. Anybody would feed you in the projects. the older guys would have boxing matches. Like if you didn't like, we were young, so if we didn't like somebody, they would make you fight. Like, you know what I mean? We wouldn't, instead of taking it to another violence, they would like give us boxing gloves. Like if you wanted to settle, your beef, whatever, or settle your argument, they were like, hey, you know what, here, there's some boxing gloves. Y'all go 2 rounds, whoever wins, and that's it. Y'all shake after that. So they were basically teaching us not to hate each other, or they just basically told us to fight it out and then just keep going on with life. You know what I mean? Instead of running and go grab a gun or a knife. My favorite memories was the block parties. We had a basketball court across the street from Crystal Avenue, and we were allowed every year, every summer, to throw block parties. The older guys would throw block parties, and it was great. We got a lot of, they used to pay the ice cream guy off, and we could get all the ice cream we want. They had barbecues out there, and it was just like one big family. It was great. It was great back then. I loved it. And then, 4th of July, we always had the parties outside during the 80s at that time. It was really good. It was really nice. Going to school every day, only thing I seen was drug dealers. You are your environment. So every morning I got up, they would be in the hallways, Dapper Dan suits, Gucci, Jordans, big Dookie chains. So I wanted to be a drug dealer when I grew up. I didn't want to be a football player. I didn't want to be a baseball player. Those are my role models. You know what I mean? Because that's what I seen every day. My best friend's older brother, this kid he was 16 without a license, and he had two Trans Am cars. You know what I mean? And that fascinated me. You know what I mean? He had a Camaro, and a Thunderbird. Like that was, and this kid didn't even have a license, and he had all these nice and flashy cars. Always gave us money. We were in the hallways. I used to go to his house, and he would let me go in his room, like, yo, pick any sneaker you want, you can have it. So that, that enticed me a lot.
It was a wonderful group of parents over there that did most of the barbecues in the summertime. You could contribute like a case of sodas and all the kids, I don't care who your parents were, good, bad, in, out, up and down, black or white, they were part of that party. Halloween, they had the best spook house.
What was
Their
that
haunted
like?
house was better because it was on the first floor of a building, and all these little rooms and nooks and crannies in there, and these women were so creative. It was amazing, because you had to have a costume. That's something else. Everybody had to have a costume. Most people's were homemade, which were the best costumes. Mine was a little cheap, whatever. But I just went down there to see it, and to see the kids. It was so much fun. They had such a good time taking pictures. And Easter egg hunt, same group of parents. They made sure that they had the same opportunities when doing the same things. Because buses don't run at night, so you can't take your children anywhere after you get home from work. So they did it right there. And I never had to worry about too much because it was almost professionally done. It's a shame that was the projects. It would have been written up everywhere if it wasn't the projects. I was walking home when I first got, it took me 2 years to get a car. And it was so cold, the snow was like, I had to carry Dakota, then stop. We were inside of a building and carry Dakota on Bank Street. And the gentleman who lived on the second floor pulled up beside me. I can't tell you how many number of people passed me and 4 little children. The oldest one was 8. And pulled up beside me. He had kids in his car. And he said, can I give you, he said, where are you going? And I told him I'm going down to Crystal Avenue to the project. He said, can I give you a ride home? And I looked in the car, you down in the room. He said, just put these kids in the car. We'll get there one way or the other. So we got down there. I was afraid that the car's going to fall apart, but at least we weren't freezing anymore. And it was so cold, we had so far to go. And when we got out the car, he went and parked. I said, oh, you live here? He said, yeah, we can't see one of our own walking like that. It was so cold. People love where they live. People always saying that they're lazy in public housing. Some people have been there for years, but they got to take their children on vacations. They got to buy a car, things that they might not be able to do in the real world. I think this is why these places were started, welfare and food stamps and public housing, and so that everybody has some quality of life. A lot of people, and that was their community. People cried when they lost those homes. They lived here, their daughter lived over there. They both all worked every day in the kitchen somewhere. How much money do you think they were making? But they took care of the neighborhood, they took care of the children around there. It was their community. To have someone just walk in there, controlling where you've lived for 20-something years and put you out and nothing you can do about it, I don't understand it. I really don't.